We're going to be talking with our COO, Matt, who is one of our few civilians on the job. So this dude's going to talk about all the things that he learned because even the acronyms and the craziness of our just military jargon that we use.
I feel bad for him some days. Being
I
surrounded
know,
by all
right?
of the veterans.
I know, right? And then there's going to be some bits and pieces from one of the people that we spoke with last time, but has rose up within the Fusion Cell company to one of our vice presidents, good old Monty Montgomery. He's got some of that insight from that different leadership perspective as well. So, all right, man, here it is. We're gonna bring him in and we're gonna get this started.
Roll the tape.
I am Matt Morrissey. I am first and foremost I'm a New Englander, born and raised. I've actually never lived outside of New England. I went to college, in Maine, born in New Hampshire, live in Massachusetts, spent time overseas when I was going through my college years, but always ended up back in New England. So I won't apologize for that. I may speak too fast, but as a New Englander would say, too bad. Staffing industry for 25-ish or so years as a profession that chose me. I didn't really choose it, but I don't think many folks in the staffing industry went to school to get into staffing or decided that's something they want to do with their life, right? So I got out of college. I had done 3 sports in college, small college up in Maine, and thought I wanted to stay in that world. Went to go work for a college, worked in the athletic department, got my MBA, and decided I did not want to do that. But now I had 2 degrees. I had no experience. I took the first job in Boston that would pay for my rent, and it was at a staffing company. And I fully expected to do that for 6 months, maybe 12, get something on my resume and go get a real job. And 25 years later, I'm still doing it, right? So this industry is littered with folks with stories very similar to mine.
I am a self-acclaimed redneck from the northeast corner of Washington State, 23-year Air Force veteran, bounced all over the place with the Air Force. Live up in the mountains now with my family. I got 2 teenage daughters.
Talk about how you have implemented SkillBridge and the benefits of some of that stuff into Fusion Cell. Give us your perspective, right? And if I remember correctly, you called it a bridge skill instead of a skill bridge because it was a little backwards. So tell us from your perspective, the bridge skill.
Yeah, well, the first person that we brought on board when we launched the company in 2019 was Radek. Radek was transitioning. This was his first gig out of a 20 plus year, pretty decorated career within the Air Force, right? Both active and then later in the reserves. And he came from a deep background in staffing, and he and Tony pretty early were talking about how strategically as we grew the company, we should maybe take advantage of this SkillBridge program. And, again, it was one they would talk about it as they already knew what it was. And again, here I am saying, explain this program to me. Yeah. And when they explained the general parameters of the program, I said, well, let me get this straight. The military is going to give me someone for anywhere from 2, 3, 4, up to 6 months full time, and it's going to cost me nothing. And they said, yeah. And I said, well, why would they do that? And it became pretty apparent to me pretty quickly that, those paths from the military into the civilian world are so underdefined, woefully inefficient, and really in a lot of ways don't exist very well. And this was one attempt by the military to help pave those roads and those paths to give folks, hands-on experience in different industry and maybe grease the wheels for industry to take some of these folks on. First and foremost, if you're a company thinking, well, I want to take advantage of the program, you probably will need help to get yourself in alignment and for you to be able to do it. Right.
Do you know of any of the programs or any of the outlets that Radek utilized as those assistances to help?
Yes, it's a very good question, Eddie. So in the beginning, it was Rad. He did it. He knew people. He made it happen, right? And he probably made what would take some companies the first time you do it 3 to 4 months. It took Rad about probably 4 to 5 weeks. And it was, again, because he had so many connections within the military. He knew how the systems work. He knew what the acronyms were. He knew the language that they used.
You may come across an employer that would love to use whatever it is that you're talking about, the SkillBridge thing, and they'll always say Skills Bridge. It's funny how that translates really quickly, but you may come across an employer that would love to use the program, but they're not a provider. They haven't been approved. That whole thing is a whole nother ball of wax. And I would encourage you to get educated on how employers can become a SkillBridge provider. Know that Fusion Cell is a fantastic resource.
After we brought our first person on, and then maybe our second or third person on, we actually started going out to a couple companies and saying, listen, if you as a company want to be set up as a certified SkillBridge partner, once you're certified, it makes it easier to bring these folks in. We'll help you do it. And they paid us for it. And we did that with about 3 different companies.
Oh, nice.
Because once we figured out how to do it, we kind of stood it up as a little bit of a service that we did in the beginning, as we were just trying to also find our way. It was right around when COVID hit. So you're trying to find any ways in which you can extend your mission, which was to bring military talent to civilian companies. It was like, well, we're going to bring some military expertise into your company and help you guys get certified and bring you up in the SkillBridge program. So we actually still can do that.
How long does that certification last once a company is like certified as a SkillBridge?
Oh, it's years. It's years.
5 years?
Yeah, and you know,
I think it's 5.
It tends to change, and actually, we just re-upped ours. I think, last week.
It was either last week or the week before.
Yeah. And you know, the thing about SkillBridge is, at the end of the day, the different branches treat it differently. And you'll have certain branches that it seems that it's an easier thing for the veteran to get into and navigate and arrive at, and others where it's not. And sometimes it's dependent on what's going on in the global stage and what's going on in the world. I know for a fact that I put my eyes on a memo from one of the branches I won't mention. It was about 9 months ago, and it was to some of the senior folks to say, listen, you know, I know SkillBridge is a great program, but really think hard about letting your folks go into this program if you have certain things that need to be satisfied and done. Because you're ultimately you have to be let to go to do that, because it's seen as, you know, the military is losing the right to have that person's skill set for the last X amount of months they might be there. I've had many discussions with companies about it. A lot of companies become a little bit intimidated by the logistics of getting it rolling. We've helped some companies through that. And we have people that we can introduce to say it's not as complicated as you think. We also can run people through Fusion Cell to companies as well using SkillBridge. But it's a great program, but it's not easy to figure out the best way to get in the groove with it and manipulate it. But what I can say is that it's been 100% worth it. But to say to us, transitioning service member, when you're getting, you know, you're 12 months out, this should be one of the primary things I would say that you need to be prioritizing about seeing if you take advantage of. Almost to a point where I'd say you'd be crazy not to. You know, there are things about resume, and there's TAPS programs you got to go through, and you know, there's a lot of things, you know, understanding your VA benefits. All these things are important, of course, but I would prioritize taking advantage of SkillBridge program if you can. Sounds like you two would probably foot stomp that, as we say, right?
Every time.
There's 2 things that I would love to point out from my experiences. One, most commands do not understand SkillBridge. They see it as a potentially negative impact to what they're trying to accomplish mission-wise. That was one thing that I uncovered, and I remembered about the application process. And I would phrase it this way: I had to educate my command on what the heck it was and why it was good for them and good for me, and so on and so forth. The other side of that coin is the actual people that process the application. I hate saying the words back then, but back then, the folks that were responsible for processing SkillBridge applications weren't even quite sure how to do it. I had to reach out to the regional representation, which was not at my base, and try to start some dialogue so that they could educate my local representative on how to get me through this. And I would tell you this, I guess there's 3 things that I remember. 1 is having to educate my command. 2, having to educate the people that actually processed that application. And 3, how was I going to use it? And what did it look like? How was I going to get out of it? And what did that mean to the company? So I had to educate Fusion Cell a little bit on it, because I was one of the early SkillBridge candidates here. So I remember the application pretty vividly, mostly because of the pain points. But once I got educated and I was able to get it all through and get it approved, it was quite a relief to know that I had 90 days in front of me to go explore, to learn this new craft, to get exposed to corporate America. But that application process was a little rough, and it's 5 years later. I do a lot of veteran advocacy, and I am still hearing the same questions that I had. So I would encourage everybody, there's three main things that you're going to have to do. You're going to have to educate your command, potentially sell them on it as well. You might have to educate your training centers or whoever's responsible for the SkillBridge program in your branch of service. And lastly, you're going to have to educate yourself on what happens if you do get it, and make sure that you understand the program better than everybody else, because you're going to have to sell it.
I also think that, the SkillBridge program is that opportunity to maybe as a company take a chance on somebody that you might not normally do and say,
Right.
okay, I don't have to pay you for 3 to 6 months and you're going to come work for me. Sure, come on in. Let's take a chance. Let's see what you can do for us. And it's providing that opportunity for the veteran to get in there and shine and go,
Yeah,
holy smokes.
you're right. I mean, so as a body of evidence, Kevin, right? We've had 9 folks come to Fusion Cell through the program, and we hired all 9 eventually.
You went from SkillBridge intern to VP of Government Services within what time frame?
4 years, I think.
This program got you here and gave this company and the senior leadership of this company the opportunity to see what your value was, right? And it gives them, it had SkillBridge not been an option, you may not have gotten that opportunity, which incredible.
When a company is interviewing a candidate, right? When a candidate should also be interviewing that company. It's the job of, obviously there's a pretty significant process when somebody comes on board. You guys both went through it with Fusion Cell, right? You probably each talked to 5-6 people right before you came on board. And in essence, I've always said philosophically, you're almost trying to scare the person away, right? You're trying to give them everything that you can about what it's like here, how hard it's going to be, what a day might look like, right? But then obviously the benefits and the vision and so on and so forth. And it's a process that can take, a certain amount of weeks. And it's not perfect, right? You hope that it gives enough that a month into it, the employee doesn't say, geez, damn, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. Or the employer doesn't say, oh man, this isn't quite the person we thought we had, right? So I've always viewed SkillBridge, honestly, as an extended interview period. Right? Because, and I think in most cases, we're probably averaging around 3 months or so, if not longer, for folks that kind of came into the SkillBridge program at Fusion Cell. In each of those scenarios, we did know where we were in the business at the time, whether or not the opportunity to stay on board full time was there or not. Right? We actually haven't had a scenario we've brought someone in knowing that we wouldn't be able to bring them on perm. And I think there are companies that do that. The good ones at least let the candidate know, because it still can be a very positive experience, because the candidate can go in, the vet can go in and they can get experience in a company, in an industry, in a geography, and it goes on their resume, but it also helps them figure out what they may or may not like and so on and so forth, even if they don't end up full time.
One of the greatest passions of my life is understanding that the basis of the family foundation and self-sustainment is a job. And that's why I love what I do. And when the military, the uniformed people, make it harder for somebody to transition out, they are negatively impacting homelessness, underemployment, suicide rates, broken families. The impact that SkillBridge has is so far beyond the whole internship and some days outside of the uniform to get yourself ready. It's way, way, way beyond that. The impact hits every one of those major categories. And I can't think of a single person that would say no to positively impacting that. So I speak directly to the command, the chiefs, the whoever's making the decisions on whether or not you send somebody to SkillBridge. Think about those things, because it is a real impact when you say no.
I mean, of those 9, 7 of them are still with the company. So I think it's kind of proven that from finding the right folks, from those folks finding the right company, ending up in the right role, and then having some retention. I don't know if there's a better way to do it. And, companies that are taking advantage of it, I think across the board would tell you the same thing. And this is a point that I make to transitioning veterans that I might be talking to that are transitioning for the first time, but also a lot of, for instance, my friends' kids or my own kids that are now getting to college age and they're coming into their first job. There's a lot of similarities there. Yeah. And I think the world in a lot of ways is wired around, well, when I come out of the military or I come out of college, I need to find a career. I need to find that company that I could be at for 5, 10, 15 years. And my answer in today's world is, no, you don't. You need to find a job. Let's just be honest. You need to find a job. And ideally, it's with a company, a good company, that will allow you to learn a lot about yourself.
Yeah.
Allow you to use your skills and flex some muscles around, the skills that you have, and set you up for potentially even your next job. And that's okay. A company would willingly take a productive person for 3 or 4 years that then decides they want to go somewhere else. That's the nature of the world we lived in today. Go look at people's LinkedIn profiles, right?
Yeah.
No one's coming out of somewhere, going and staying somewhere 8, 9, 10 years anymore. It just isn't happening so much anymore. SkillBridge may land you even in a company where your first job, it's just as important to learn what you don't want to do. Right? It's just as important to learn what isn't the best for you. So it might set you up for potentially that second job. I think SkillBridge gives you the same sort of opportunity to do that. And it's really, really valuable, to find out, like I said, parts of the country you don't want to be in, right? Whether working remote or having real people, right, is important, right? How much of your day is in a spreadsheet or in a report versus talking to people, the structure of an organization, right? And I would say veterans, they really don't know the answers to a lot of those things in non-military companies, especially depending how long they were there. Again, SkillBridge is just a great chance for them to do that, learn what they don't like, right? Be okay to say that's not what I want, but also give them confidence, right? Because at the end of the day, there's a lot of mystery around, is anything that I just did the last 2 decades or whatever else going to do me any good when I get on the outside? And if a SkillBridge gives you nothing more than confidence that it will, and you might say, and now that I have that confidence, this ain't the place I want to stay, that's okay too.
Eddie and I did not do SkillBridge. Eddie and I went out and bashed our heads against the wall to find a job, and we're fortunate enough to do so. And I think similar to SkillBridge, we found an industry, right, that we thought we wanted to be in. And maybe not exactly sure what position within that industry did we want, but we got into the industry. We got some of that real life experience and got to see, when you're in the industry, to see the different roles and how they interact and who does what. And, oh, maybe I do want it. And, you mentioned at the end of someone's SkillBridge, well, what parts did you really like and what parts were you kind of like, I could do without that? That helps you better frame like where you want to go in that industry, right? What resources did you have at your point of needing to educate these people? What did you use? Where did you go to find the information to educate them?
I went to, in the Air Force, we call it our Air Education and Training Center, or your family support centers and that sort of thing. And I went and asked them about it. They didn't have really good answers. I'm kind of a detail guy, so I tend to ask decent questions to garner what it is that I need. They couldn't answer it. I asked them who could. And that's when I found the regional representative for that SkillBridge that covered certain bases. So that's where I started to get all of my information. And if you are applying for SkillBridge and you feel like your local person is not as savvy as you want them to be, or you're not feeling comfortable with their answers, just know that there is a regional representative where all these SkillBridge applications are going to go to from your area, and they will know. That's all I knew back then, Kevin. So the first person that I would bring up is Dave Shantz, the quote unquote DOD SkillBridge champion. I've met with him before, and there's probably not too many people that are as up to speed with recent changes and what's going on with the program. And he can answer questions both from the employer's perspective. And I think this is a really important point to make, Kevin, that I failed to bring up on my SkillBridge application process. The resources are out there. Dave Shantz. There's another organization that I have no personal affiliation with, and I've never been to their event, but I've only heard positive things from that, and that's 50 Strong. They have a pretty robust SkillBridge information program. They also have the ability to connect folks to active SkillBridge providers that are looking for people. And then lastly, I'll plug something that's near and dear to my heart is Milkroot. Milkroot is another resource where it is a community of recruiters that have military affiliation that are out there helping people get closer to opportunity. And many of us Milkrooters have a lot of experience with SkillBridge. And if we don't, we know people that are.
We're extremely appreciative of you taking the time out of your busy day to share some info on this awesome program. I love how you framed it. SkillBridge is saving lives, man. It's really influencing the outcome of transitioning service members. If you are a transitioning service member, if you're going to be one, look into the program, engage at least 24 months out.
I just kind of want to wrap it up by saying, one, thank you for our opportunity that you gave us. Thank you for the opportunity for us to do this, to share our stories, not just internally, but with our entire network. Thanks for trusting us in some of the things that we're doing, even though I know in the back of your mind, you're like, what are these two crazy guys doing? I know that is probably like, it may have kept you up 1 or 2 nights in your life. I don't know. But also,
anyway.
and also thanks for coming on and sharing from your perspective about this SkillBridge program, how it's affected you, how it's helped this company, and just the advice to not only the service members, but also to the other companies that are considering SkillBridge. I think those messages are huge. And, you know, if there is anybody out there that is concerned about this, feel free to reach out to any of the cellmates here at Fusion Cell, and we'd be more than happy to assist with that.
And I think if I heard correctly, companies, hey, if you're interested and you need a little help getting this set up, give us a call. Monty, forever grateful, brother. We appreciate your time.
Man, I feel like I'm sitting in front of two celebrities. Sea Stories is fantastic. It's just getting off the ground. You two are some of the most stand-up gentlemen that I've met in my entire life. And what you guys are trying to do, and you're having fun doing it too. You're trying to form our community. You're trying to lift our community, right? High tides raises all the boats, and you guys are trying to keep it at high tide for everybody. And I love you both, and thanks for giving me the opportunity to even talk to you, because you guys are pretty famous now.